Hello, this is the Knowledge Catalog, and in this video, we are going to talk about soil conservation, particularly mga different methods in soil conservation. So let's start. So, ang basics nito or ang hinohold na concept ng video na to is that soil is a very important, it's a very essential component of our ecosystems. It's actually a foundation, and it's considered to be the least renewable resource component of it. We need to always remember na kapag nakalimutan natin kung paano i-tend ang soil, para na rin natin kinalimutan ng mga sarili natin because it is actually where most of the actually it is actually what supports life. Just try to imagine if we're all floating in water, like are we even going to survive, right? Things that are in the soil are capable of helping organisms or enabling the life on organisms. That's why we need to always keep in mind that it is important to take care of it to make sure that we don't pollute it. Ayun. Now, the gist of what I said is that to forget how to tend the soil is to forget ourselves. To forget how to take care of how to conserve soil as a resource is to also forget of our basic needs. It's also to forget that the one of the basic concepts that governs life is that we have soil, a healthy kind of soil. It is also to forget that most ecosystems that are most productive, that has the greatest biodiversity, has the best kind of soil. So we always have to keep in mind that soil conservation is not just a responsibility that we have for nature, it is a responsibility that we also have for ourselves. Soil conservation is the name given to a handful of techniques aimed at preserving the soil. Soil loss or loss of soil fertility can be traced back to several causes such as overuse, erosion, salinization, chemical contamination, yan, yung mga yan. Unsustainable subsistence farming and the slash and burn clearing methods used in some less developed regions can often cause deforestation, even loss of soil nutrients, erosion on a massive scale, and sometimes even complete desertification. So, soil erosion removes the topsoil, we all know that, which is necessary for organic matter, nutrients, and microorganisms, which are all required for plants to grow and shine. Soil conservation is one such a step that protects soil from being washed away. The soil then ends up in aquatic resources, bringing in pesticides and fertilizers used in agricultural land, which is not good for aquatic or marine ecosystems. Now, healthy soil is essential for plants. We all know that for them to grow and flourish. Now, we all must take necessary steps to conserve the soil as part of an environmentally friendly lifestyle. There are several ways in which we can do this. They can either be agricultural practices or actually some things that you can take at home. So the first one is contour plowing. So as you can see, ayan siya. This method originated in ancient Phoenicia. Contour plowing, it involves plowing grooves into the desired farmland, then planting the crop for rows in the grooves, and then following contours. It is a very effective way of farmland slopes to prevent runoff and to improve crop yields. That's the first one. Letter A. Letter B. I'm sorry about that. Letter B is terrace farming. Banawe rice terraces, the world famous Banawe rice terraces. Ayan. So terracing is a method of carving multiple flat leveled areas into hills. Steps such as this, yung hagdan-hagdan pala yan, are formed by the terraces, which are surrounded by a mud wall to prevent runoff and hold the soil nutrients in the beds. Now, it is more commonly found in lesser developed nations due to the difficulty of using mechanized farming equipment in the terraces. It is quite popular in Asia for planting rice, especially in our country. Ayan. The next one is key line design. It is a more enhanced version of contour plowing. It is maximizing water retention by considering all the watershed properties when making the contour lines. So the key line refers to the two topographic features linked to water flow. This allows the water to run off directly into an existing water channel and prevent soil erosion caused by water. So next one, speaking of water, is perimeter runoff control. This is the practice of planting trees, shrubs, and ground cover around the perimeter of your farmland. And this impedes surface flows and helps keep nutrients in the farmed soil. So para hindi sila basta lang mag-flow away. Flow away talaga. Now, using the grass way is a specialized way of handling perimeter runoff that uses surface friction to channel and dissipate runoff. Okay, so next one, wind breaks. Ayan, so obvious naman siguro dyan sa picture natin dyan. Okay, so rows of tall trees are used in dense patterns around the farmland and prevent wind erosion. Evergreen trees can provide year-round protection, but deciduous trees can be adequate if foliage is apparent during the seasons when the soil is bare. Ayan. So next, letter F. This is the sixth one. So cover crops and crop rotation. We're familiar with this. Cover crops such as turnips and radishes are rotated with cash crops to blanket the soil all year round para hindi siya maiwang tenga and produce green manure that replenishes nitrogen and other critical nutrients. So using cover crops can also suppress weeds since marami laging nakatanim sa land na yon. Nagagamit yung nutrients, nababalik din siya kaagad. Okay, yeah, because green manure, which is something we'll be clarifying later. Next is soil conservation farming. It's quite straightforward, yeah. It is a mixture of farming methods that intends to mimic the biology of a virgin land. These practices can be used to prevent erosion and even restore damaged soil and encourage plant growth. Now, eliminating the use of nitrogen fertilizer and fungicides can increase yields and protect crops from drought and even flooding. Next is medyo nakakabulol, agrostological measures. So planting grass in heavily eroded areas, ang tawag doon is agrostological measure. Kapag, again, when you're planting grass sa mga heavily eroded na mga areas. Ayan. So lay farming practices cultivating grass in rotation with regular crops helps to increase the nutrient level in the soil. So grass is not entirely being a negative thing to be present in the farmland right now. It's actually helping out in keeping the nutrients of the soil intact or, in a cycle. But never gone. Okay. So when the grass is harvested, it can be used as a fodder for cattle. For heavily eroded soil, it is recommended to grow grass for many years to let the soil naturally repair itself. Now, the next one is no-till farming, which is also known as direct drilling or zero tillage. Ang method na to is for growing crops year-round without changing the topography of the soil. Kung paano mo siya dinatnan, ganun mo siya gagamitin. Okay, this technique increases the amount of water that penetrates the soil and can increase the organic matter of the soil, which leads to larger yields. Now, as mentioned kanina, the 10th one is green manure. Manure, as we know it, is tae ng kalabaw. Siguro pinagdala ka na nun nung elementary ka. Kung kasing edad kita, okay. But green manure is waste material pa rin, but it is coming from plants. So green manures are a few different crops that can be grown not for produce or food storage, but for fertilizer. Pwede silang i-grow tapos papatayin para maging pataba sa lupa. Ayun. So this method can improve the soil structure and it suppresses the growth of weeds. Kasi you're growing them pa rin naman. You're not just letting them just grow by themselves. You're still tending to them in a way. Yeah. Next one is salinity management. So when water evaporates from the soil, nag-iiwan yan ng salt. That is a natural characteristic of soil. Meron siyang metals, meron din siyang mga halogens. And when sodium as a metal and chlorine as a halogen meets, it will become salt. And salt, as you know, it is soluble in water. So when when water evaporates, may iwan ng dalawang yan or may iwan ng mga compounds ng dalawang yan, it can cause significant damage to the soil. And it can also cause nutrient loss. Now, by using humic acids, it can prevent this, or by growing crops like salt bush, it can rejuvenate the soils and replace lost nutrients. Now, high levels of salt in the soil can often be caused by changes made to the water table by damming and other causes. Pero it's, fundamentally bad. That's why it has to be controlled. Next one is stream bank protection. Kapag bumabaha, stream banks can usually cave in. Para maiwasan ito, walls must be constructed along the banks or, plant useful tree species para ma-prevent yung, pagkasira ng mga stream banks in the future. And para rin, ma-prevent yung loss of soil na, magpo-flow lang sa stream. Okay, so as an elementary student, perhaps, you have known this nung bata-bata pa tayo. It's earthworms. So earthworms they provide a great benefit for farmland due to the way they burrow under the ground and provide more area for water to rest after it has infiltrated the soil. Now, when these worms excrete egesta, EGESTA, this sits in the soil and it gives the crops many nutrients which are absorbed via the roots of the plants. So mga earthworms, they can they contain a vast amount of more nutrients than any natural soil in the world. So for that reason, it should be invited into the soil of farmland to help prevent soil erosion, and this will actually also lead to larger crop yields. Dami na, no? So next one is mineralization. Minerals are needed by the plant, so give it to them. Okay, that is it in layman's term. Para matulungan ng mga crops na mas mataas yung yield na mapoproduce nila, sometimes ang pagdadagdag ng mga crushed rock or ng mga chemical supplements, they can help. Okay, para ma-combat yung mineral depletion sa soil. Usually kasi after flooding, nawawash away yun. So kailangan ma-replenish yung minerals na nasa soil by just purposefully putting it in there. Kasi it's Korean national talaga, natural farming. Ito naman, this type of farming is something you will find online. It takes advantage of the natural and indigenous microorganisms that produce fertile soils para makapag-yield ng high output, para rin mawala yung need para sa pesticides and even herbicides. So an improvement in soil health and output is what keeps this method used in respective areas. Ang focus kasi talaga niya is paggamit ng mga natural at mga indigenous na mga microorganisms. Hindi yung mga the usual stuff like chemical fertilizers and whatnot. Next one naman is something you can do at home. Yung mga dryways kasi sa mga patio, yung mga paved pathways yan, they allow the precipitation na mag-flow freely out of them. Yung water naman yan, as it flows, it picks up momentum and in turn erodes in any soil in which it flows over after leaving the impervious spaces. Yeah, that happens. So reducing the amount of these around your farmland will and prevent erosion. So para mas maganda yung yung orientation or yung pagflow ng mga nutrients sa soil, kailangan bawasan yung mga ganyan, yung mga paved parts. ng ground around you. Halimbawa yan, yung mga driveways. Next one is dry farming. In areas with very low amount of rainfall, crops that require very little water should be grown. Now, this will lead to the preservation of the natural levels of moisture and the nutrients in the soil. Kailangan alam mo yung mga dapat itanim sa mga dry regions. And the next one naman is for yung mga medyo maulan, rain gardens. A rain garden is a shallow depression in the land na kayang makapag-hold at makapag-collect ng running water mula sa mga impervious spaces nga, yung mga kanina, surfaces na may patio. And it prevents erosion while saving the nutrient that inevitably get washed away. Now, this also gives you a good bed to grow wetland plants. Next is we can re-establish forest covers. Pansin nyo dyan, yung bandang sa may right na tatanggal na yung cover na yun kasi because of logging. Now, we can re-establish that by planting a dense number of trees in a forest. Another benefit is the windbreak na pwedeng i-provide ng mga ganito aside from just re-establishing the forest cover. Ayan. Kanina, we were talking about salinity. Now, we talk about pH level. Kailangan ng soil is free from pollutants that can either make it too acidic or too basic. So, using a pH indicator monthly to check the levels of acids in the soil and treat the soils with eco-friendly chemicals to prevent loss of crops will be guaranteeing or siguro helping out in making sure that you get higher yields. Next one, indigenous crops. May mga crops talaga na ganito ang classification. They are grown by the community. They're indigenous. Or perhaps you have another way of defining it. Okay, that's actually fine. That's not just fine. It's expected. The growth of indigenous crops is a very good way to conserve soil. Since they have been growing in there, perhaps they are in a perfect situation. They are in a perfect condition to grow. As the plants have a natural need for the nutrients in the soil in your area, they help to prevent soil erosion. Now, if we grow non-indigenous crops, a recommended tip is to plant indigenous crops around them para prevent ang soil erosion, because there's a reason why these crops, indigenous crops, are growing naturally in that place. Next is we prevent overgrazing. This point was discussed in one of my other videos. Probably that one before this, because I can still remember it. Let us limit it is important to limit grazing of livestock. Okay. Because if overgrazing occurs, the plants get hardier and there are more nutritious species forage in order to rebuild the soil. Now, you can also harvest these crops and feed them to the grazers during the winter season. So, just prevent overgrazing. Or, replace them with the native species. Next is liming. This is yet another effective method of soil conservation. It refers to the addition of some calcium or magnesium-rich materials sa soil to improve its mineral content. So the amount of material to be added per unit volume of the soil is dependent on its CEC or cation exchange capacity. Meron siyang ganon. In soils with lower cation exchange capacity that lack buffering agents like clay and organic matter, overliming can happen very, very easily. So we just have to be careful. Next is agroecology. Once we know that the agricultural systems how agricultural systems can be better, we can observe the soil better. So agroecology is the study of the ecological systems that are applied to agricultural production. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development defines it as the study of relation of agricultural crops and the environment. Now, although this term does not apply for any agricultural practice, mostly it is used to refer to alternate agricultural practices. Next one is reforestation, or this is much like reestablishing forest cover. But this is much no, a more common version of that. Reforestation and afforestation are two terms that are quite mistaken for each other. But actually quite different. Okay, so reforestation is the name given to the process by which new crops or plants are planted in an area that once used to bear foliage but now has none, as in none. So reforestation brings a piece of land back to life. Whereas afforestation naman, it is the process in which new crops or plants are planted on a piece of land that had previously been barren. This is a process that is now undertaken by many government initiatives to facilitate the process of soil conservation. Ayan. Planted in an area, okay. Okay, so next one. Number 26 is careful use of chemical fertilizers. To keep the soil healthy, it is essential that only proper and required amounts of correct chemicals fertilizers are added to the soil para hindi siya masyadong magkaroon ng masyadong marami of anything, because it's really important to maintain the pH level, salinity levels, and the amount of fertilizers on the soil or in the soil. Number 27 is soil microorganisms. Aside from earthworms, there are other lifesavers in there. Okay, so there are several good microorganisms in the soil that keep it healthy. Now, yung levels in the soil can easily be enhanced by planting the right kind of trees and the right kind of crops, or also by using the right type of fertilizers. Now, once locked in, these microorganisms can do wonders to the soil. Syempre, life for life. Parang ganun siya. It's organisms that are going to support life as well. That is supporting them back. Okay, so ganun na siya. And then the last one is by sharing of knowledge. What is a better way of soil conservation than letting each and every one of us know the status of a particular part of land. So for more developed countries, they can and should share their farming knowledge gained over the years with lesser developed nations of the world, para for the sake of science, sharing and communicating your findings and discoveries. This will lead to a better quality of the soil worldwide and can help prevent famine, and it also solves the food crisis in some parts of the world. Now, I hope that you can at least man lang you were given kahit slight ideas lang kung ano ba ibig nating sabihin by soil conservation and how important is it even to us. Alright, actually especially for us. I would just like to clarify something about reforestation, afforestation. Okay, so reforestation again is the name given to the process by which new crops or plants are planted in an area that once used to bear foliage but now has none. Now, reforestation brings a piece of land back to life. Afforestation, on the other hand, is the process in which new crops or plants are planted on a piece of land that had previously been barren, as in it's bare. Okay? Unlike reforestation that had foliage before, kapag ina-forest mo isang place, talagang barren siya before. Okay, so I hope that that is clearing, that clears everything up. Alright, so this is the Knowledge Catalog, and I hope that I'll see you in the next videos.